So, welcome everyone. I hope you had a good day canoeing. I did. My arms are kind of tired. I had to put on my scarf. And we got a little bit of sun, but hopefully you all had a chance to have a little bit of a nap because this evening by the fire with Trish Garner is going to be very stimulating and very important. So this is our third day, and I hope that you're still super engaged. It's about now at camp when we would be getting something from home like brownies. And in this case, maybe some Mars brownies. So you wore a hat today when you were on the water. There's lots of different hats you can wear on the water. And many of us in our branches wear lots of different hats. This is my golf hat. And this is my mom's favorite hat, and I keep it because I think of her often when I wear it.
That's adorable.
But the point is that many of us do wear many hats, and I think Trish Garner is the perfect example of that. Trish wears so many hats so well. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things about Trish, maybe that you knew, but maybe you didn't know. You know that she bills herself as a recovering attorney. She says that often.
A what?
A recovering attorney.
Oh.
Yeah. But she's also an artist. And she has the designation MSW, which is Master of Social Work. So she has been a social worker. But what may really surprise you is that she's written an astrology book. And that may tell you a lot about Trish. But we all know and love her as our fabulous public policy. I'm going to use the word wonk because that is what really is appropriate. But she's our public policy chair and a great one. And it's unbelievable the amount of work that Trish does on behalf of all of us. So thank you, Trish, for being here. And we are waiting to hear what you have to say.
My pearls of wisdom. I cannot tell you how great it is to see you all. Not just because you're coming to see me or hear me, but just seeing your faces. It's awesome. So thanks for coming. Before I begin, I really want to say some special thanks to everyone who's been working on this skills conference. I mean, I know we all say thanks all the time, and we mean it, but I really mean it. Our co-president Sue Klumpf and Pat Lehman, and of course, Pat Squire and Nancy Brown. They're doing groundbreaking work here. I don't know about you, but I haven't had too many Zoom annual meetings of some kind. And they're making it just run smooth as silk, like they just done it, time and time again. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, everyone, put up your hands. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Our workshop is titled "The Work We Need to Do," and an amazing journey. My goal this evening is to get us engaged in the issues of race and racism in the United States, so we can begin to figure out the work that we as an organization and individuals need to do to move forward. Until really quite recently, and you've probably been doing this as well, I've been reading books about race and history and so on. But a couple of circumstances really caused me to, rev up my efforts. One, as you might be able to imagine, is certain current events and, Black Lives Matter movement and so on. But the other was AAUW of Oregon's efforts to foster civics education in schools. Problem is, I read some of the curricula, even Harvard stuff. And I wondered, oh my gosh, what are we trying to sell here? How can we earnestly tell, much less, instruct young people, in particular people of color, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, we have a representative democracy. Now we have not abandoned the civics education quest, but we have taken a pause to step back, to listen and learn from others about what civics really means today. So, that's ongoing. Another point I want to raise at the outset is I want to apologize in advance. I'm white. I talk about race with trepidation and consummate respect. Race isn't my lived experience, but hopefully I'll be talking about my journey so that we can go on a journey together. Okay, we are going to be doing, the structure here is I'm going to talk for a little bit, and then we're going to have a breakout group, breakout groups for about 7 to 10 minutes, regardless, we'll see. And then I'm going to come back and talk at you some more. Frankly, Nancy, why don't you show them the questions? These are the questions that, particularly the first two, that I'm going to ask you to take a look at. And as you do it, this work is not easy. Discomfort pushes us to explore new places, and that's never comfy. As we embark on the questions in the process, I want you to look at it as not a blame game, not a self-blame or, blaming others. It's a share, discuss, and learn game. I really fundamentally believe, excuse me, that embarking on this kind of journey can bring a whole new level of understanding to me, to you, for our families, our communities, our country. Goodness, sorry about that. At least for me, as I have gone down this path, I kind of go like here, and I say, okay, well, here's my racism, and here's not, and I'm cool, I got it, and then something comes along, and I'm going, oops. Unfortunately, this quadrant, got filled in a little bit more. And there's more for me to learn about my own racism. I think there are some examples, that we can think about. Let's say your child has been assigned to a class with predominantly Black kids. Ouch, oops. We can be honest, you see a Black man walking down your neighborhood. I know I certainly have experienced the ouch, when I'm the only Black face or, one of a couple of Black faces in a room. I will tell you that is an experience. Another one is being excluded from an event or a meeting because you're white. Now, but we are not used to being excluded, particularly on the basis that we're white. It's an ouch. So I know that's a brief introduction, hopefully to, take a look at your ouches and my ouches together. But at this point, Nancy, I'd like for us to break out into some sessions. So you guys do the work, I'm just rolling along here, and take a look at least at the first two questions.
Okay, Trish, these are all the questions for breakout.
Oh, okay, well then.
I separated them out on a separate page, so.
I see you did. All right, we're good. Okay, well, have at it, folks. I'll see you in about 7-10 minutes or so.
Before anybody else says anything, I want to say that was fun.
Yeah, we had a good discussion, Trish. Good. It was really good.
Great.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
The breakouts was great. Good.
Love to hear it. Although every time I hear breakout, I think of acne, but that's neither here nor there. So.
Your teenage self is resurfacing.
That's it. All right.
All right. Are we all back?
Let me know.
Are we all back? 47 participants.
Well, I'm delighted to know that, you enjoyed the process. And really, I hope it will encourage you to continue your and our journey to wrap our minds around racism You know, there's the ouch of, oh no, it's not me, I'm not racist. But that ouch, as most ouches when we're dealing with this issue, is usually instantly coupled with an almost irresistible urge. You know, it's not only it's not me, but I'm not a racist. You know, one of the biggie, you know, I'm one of the good guys. I marched in the 60s. My best friends are Black. I'm a vegetarian. No, we're not, but I think you get the point. So the roadblock of that is that I can't see the importance, for example, of my being able to go to a grocery store of my choice, which others can't necessarily access. Okay, let's kind of take a first step here and acknowledge and confront biases, prejudices, you know, what they mean and so on. Obviously, there are overt, you know, using the N-word. I don't think I have to worry about that with this crowd. More problematic and, you know, for all of us is unconscious and implicit bias. We don't know what we don't know. I'm going to ask you, I think one or two of us might remember the movie Gone with the Wind. What didn't we notice when we were watching it? And maybe not until the present day. I'm going to have you think, I don't want you to say, but I'm going to give some descriptors and I want you to think, okay, which one's white, which one's Black? Okay, here's one group. Noble, dashing, handsome, beautiful. And the other, dutiful, dependent, content. Okay, I'm not going to give the answer. I think you can guess from those descriptors what problems there might be or issues that are shown with Gone with the Wind. It's more complicated than that. But what about Tarzan, Oklahoma, although that's dealing with Native American, Planet of the Apes? How about Rocky? You know, dint of work, he beats Black Apollo Creed. How about Hamilton, the recent production of Hamilton? Food for thought. Another roadblock that I have come up with is, you know, I'm colorblind. We're a post-racist society. Well, not good enough, not honest enough. What I would really be saying when I say that is, it's not my fault there's racism. It's already taken care of. You know, 60s, those sit-ins and, you know, the educational laws and such. However, for example, even today, when employers see job applicant names of like Kwame or Kanisha, what happens? Studies show that whites are twice as likely than Blacks to be called back. Saying we're colorblind also denies the fact of the negative racial experiences that people of color have had. We reject implicitly their culture and their perspectives, and we're prevented from examining our own biases and makes it more difficult to build bridges of communication. It's kind of like a Monopoly game, and I took this from YouTube, so, you know, this isn't mine, but I thought it particularly instructive, at least to me. Okay, we're playing Monopoly game. We've moved from Gone with the Wind. We're now doing Monopoly. Okay, I'm playing against an opponent. We play 400 rounds, kind of like the years of slavery, but 400 rounds, but I can't earn any money. I can't own any houses. I can't get any hotels. What's even worse is even when I do, I got to give the money and the houses to my opponent. Okay, next round, next 50 games. I'm told, okay, now you can earn money, get houses. But how do I catch up? You know, my opponent has amassed all this wealth. How can I catch up? So being colorblind doesn't solve the problem or necessarily exonerate us from doing nothing. Okay, Nancy, do you have the first slide there? It's entitled Race. Okay. These, you know, I have pulled from a variety of different sources, but with respect to race, there is no genetic basis for race. The Human Genome Project showed that. It's, it's just a myth. All of our genes, we are 99.9% the same. Race is a social construct. It's an identity based on assumptions and rules made by a society. And importantly, developed to justify slavery and to confirm our superiority. Again, it's not quite the same thing as ethnicity. And there have been studies about that too, but that hasn't changed the basic proposition. There's no genetic basis for race. Next slide. Racism and racist. Racism is themism. It's looking at a Black person and seeing a representative of all Blacks. But I would bet, just like with me, it doesn't happen that, when someone perceives they don't understand what white folk do or what they believe in, they don't ask us, well, you're a white person, why don't you answer the question on behalf of white folk? That happens a lot with Black folk. I doubt that's happened to many of us because white is kind of like, well, it's white. Racism and being a racist. This is from the dictionary, by the way, Merriam-Webster. A belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority. I also like the one by Ibram X. Kendi. He wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist and Stamped in America, great books. The Stamped in America is hard to read because you're going to be reading about history. Ouch. Anyway, he talks about racism as a marriage of racist policies and racist ideas that produces and normalizes racial inequalities. Now, I don't know if any of you are saying, particularly with the next one, racist is someone who endorses a racial hierarchy, problems are rooted in groups, supporting racist policies. Oh, that's not me. Not me. I'm not a racist. So why are you talking about this, Trish? Well, perhaps the next slide, which talks about systemic or structural racism, will give a clue as to kind of where I'm going. I will say there is one little red flag I have about this. When I start talking about systemic and structural racism, I get a little concerned that it's going to give us an out. It's structural, it's systemic. I can't control things. It's, I don't have to do anything. So I think we can get beyond that. And because I think understanding of systemic racism is absolutely just essential to entering into this whole topic. Systemic racism happens when structures are formed and processes are carried out by groups with power, such as governments, businesses, schools. Their aim is to maintain white economic status and supremacy. In terms of, we're not talking about individual interactions. We're not talking about race relations. But we're talking about a structure, a system where racism is baked into a structural construct, albeit an invention not based in fact. Unfortunately, and I'm sure you guys know about this, we have a long and continuing history of economic exploitation, slavery, etc. And I urge you to read about the history. When you start reading the history that we did not learn, you will be sickened. In any event, I'm going to give an example that talks about the beginnings of structural and systemic racism. It's important to remember that the discrimination took place first and the racism followed. I'll explain this some more. It's not the other way around. It's not that we were racist and discriminated, it's the discrimination came first. So I'll give you a little history. Until the 17th century, there really was no concept called race. In the early 1600s, people were being imported mostly indentured servants, black, white, and there were lots of discussions around that time. Who's white? Does being a Christian matter? How about people from India? How about Pocahontas and her progeny with John Rolfe? Was she white? Were they white? What did that mean? And there are all sorts of, all over the map, different decisions about those issues. But then in 1705, there were these slave codes which were adopted. And you guys may have heard of this, I don't know. I think many of us probably have. All servants imported into the country are considered now slaves. Even if you'd been indentured, even if you're a freed person, you're now a slave, you're a chattel, you're real estate, subject to be sold. Blacks can't employ whites, they can't own property, business, they can't vote. And a master can punish a slave to death, and there would be no punishment for the master. That's when the construct we know as race first began to be formulated. But you may be asking, why 1705? What was really going on here? Well, first, as general background, cotton in the South and textile industry in the North needed lots of labor. And there was a concern about the possibility of an alliance between poor whites and poor blacks, farmers, indentured service, but poor whites, poor blacks, how they might challenge the economic order. Well, into this scene in 1676, there's Bacon's Rebellion. Am I taking you back to your, 8th grade history class? Anyway, there's a lot to it, but basically what happened is a group of poor whites and poor blacks got together, and essentially they wanted to get the land from the Indians, and they tried to ally with the more wealthy planters and the governor of Virginia and all that, and they weren't able to. They were not happy, so they went ahead and, I don't know if they raped and pillaged, but they certainly committed violence, and they destroyed Jamestown. That did not make the wealthier elites happy. They were concerned. So what the elites did, and the wealthy people, is they searched for a way to place a wedge between these groups, the poor white and the poor black. Ta-da, 1705 slave codes. They effectively pitted the blacks versus the poor white and wealthy white. I think you might recognize some of the results of that situation today. When we look at exploitation, when we look at the results of exploitation, poor neighborhoods, segregated neighborhoods, low level of academic achievement, low wages, and say, well, that's why they're different. Frankly, they might not be as intelligent. They might be kind of lazy. What I'm trying to say here is the discrimination that caused the economic results created the racism, not the other way around. Structural racism. Okay, why don't we show the slide? I think there's a picture slide, Nancy. Yep, that's kind of how it is. You can see the young Black woman with a ball and chain on her. Oops, back to the image. All right, and you can see all the obstacles that are in front of her. We're saying, okay, go ahead. On your mark, get go. It's equal opportunity, go. Well, structural racism prevents that from happening. Okay, next slide. Now we're getting into it, white privilege. White privilege is generally seen as an unseen, unconscious advantage. And the example I can't help but mention, it's kind of like men who are generally unwilling to admit that they are overprivileged. You don't know what you don't know. White privilege is the power of being normal, the power of the benefit of the doubt. Like, when we type, what names get spell checked? Patricia, John, Kwame, Kanisha. It's this concept that we're the normal, we're the standard. And then there's Black. So it's not that, white people, as I say here, have never worked hard or struggled or earned justifiably. That is not what we're talking about here. It's more, as I mentioned before, access to grocery stores, hospitals, healthcare, being able to walk in any neighborhood without a problem. What about positive role models in the media? We have those, but Black folk don't necessarily have those. So in thinking about white privilege, I have a question. And I am going to ask you, and you can think to yourself, although, I don't know, I was thinking of having someone answer. When was affirmative action first adopted? I'm just going to ask anyone if they want to unmute and answer. When was, affirmative action first adopted, developed?
1965.
Okay, I'll take it. All right.
It was an executive order signed by Johnson.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, let me ask you a couple of other things. You don't have to answer because I got a couple examples here. In 1618, yes, I'm back into history, there was a headright system. And that said, anyone willing and able to emigrate to the colonies were given from 1 to 1,000 acres of land free of charge. But Europeans only can apply. In 1705, I think we've heard that date, indentured servants, obviously not slaves, at the end of their indenture were given 50 acres, 30 shillings, 10 bushels of corn, and a musket. In 1785, there was a Land Ordinance Act, $1 per acre, but to whites only. And a lot of land was occupied, a lot of the kind of the Midwestern and so on, as the Native Americans were pushed off their land. $1 an acre. In 1864, it sounds like there's some good news. General Sherman promised 40 acres and a mule to folks who'd been slaves. However, the year later, that was rescinded, and all the property, or virtually all the property, went back to the prior owners. We can then hop to the New Deal in 1933. In the time period between 1933 and 1962, 90% of all the money generated for the various programs went to whites. 98%. Social Security, domestic and agricultural workers were excluded. Now, who would they be? I just read something the other day, and again, one of these history books, about the Public Works Authority. And they were building after the New Deal, and also, with respect to World War II when housing was needed. And they built a lot of housing, provided federal funding for it. But a vast majority of all those buildings were explicitly restricted against blacks living there, or segregated. We can hop one more hop here. In 1944, the GI Bill of Rights, the military coming back from the World War II. At the South's insistence, the benefits were required to be administered locally. Guess what happened there? White folk got the benefits of the GI Bill of Rights. Black folks didn't. And that money built our middle class. So when we take a look over at, folks in poor neighborhoods, there are reasons And what I'm saying here, my question was, when did affirmative action first start? Well, aren't these examples of affirmative action? We got something because we were white. It just kind of puts a new way of kind of thinking about how things happened as they have. Okay, next one, assimilationism. This one's a biggie. And it's kind of hard for me to even explain, because I will freely admit I was, and probably to some degree still am, in this category. In other words, I am racist in some ways, but I don't believe in segregation. But am I an anti-racist? Which means I'm willing to do things like, okay, I'll allow the state to say that there are no more mortgage deductions to, supply money for reparations. Am I an anti-racist? Am I willing to really try to change the system? It's more difficult. I have a tendency to be, and I'm trying to remove myself from this category, but being an assimilationist. It's kind of related to unconscious bias, but it's really the idea that in the United States, there really is equal opportunity. And if you don't cut it, it's because of you. All people need to do is, pull themselves up their bootstraps. We give them money, we give them programs, all they need to do is take advantage of it. Forget the fact maybe that our educational system is seriously segregated, but assimilationism is encouraging minority cultural groups, Blacks, etc., to be similar to larger, i.e., like white groups. Overtly or implicitly seeing the white standard as the superior, the normal. That's what people have to do to, be good. They have to be able to, graduate from college or, advance in work. Otherwise, it's, really their problem. This was built out of the good part of us, in the 60s and so on. We wanted to help people. We wanted to say, okay, you have equal opportunity. But as the Monopoly game showed, and hopefully the examples that I gave of the beneficiaries of affirmative action, that means us, it's not so easy. I think sort of an example of assimilationism is the popularity of Raisin in the Sun. Wow, wasn't that great? A Black guy made it. See, they can do it. Another one I think, which is even more nuanced, but perhaps even more important, is the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. Again, with like Gone with the Wind, I don't know about you, but I thought To Kill a Mockingbird was an awesome movie. However, if you take a look at it at this point, what you see is, some polite white folks, and you see an example of individual injustice, but no evidence of any underlying change of a way of life. The white characters, they have personalities, they have mannerisms, they have, peculiar dress, they have histories, but not the Black ones. And we have, a la an assimilationist frame, the white savior, Atticus Finch, who seemingly, absolved the white race from the ills of racism. But did anything really change? Or did that just allow us to think, we're the good guys, we're not racist? Like, I certainly have thought. So I'm gonna conclude here before, we have some questions if you have any. And hopefully I've stirred the pot here, made you either think twice or want to say, ouch, or that's not me, fight with me. Anyway, here's some work we need to do. We need to acknowledge our racism. Uncomfortable. As James Baldwin said, not everything that's faced can be changed. but nothing can be changed until it's faced. We need to stop being defensive. Yeah, okay, so I'm racist, so I need to learn more, and I'll, know more. I'll deepen my understanding. I'll get more information. We're university women. Learning is important to us. So we need to be willing to be called out. You're racist. So we can unlearn and relearn. We have to refuse to go along when we hear racist words or attitudes. We have to be an anti-racist, as I said, which is more than just being not racist, but actively seek to change the system. We need to include people of color at all levels of women's organizations, including AAUW and their agendas. That's a challenge. But I think we first need to learn ourselves, listen ourselves, reach out, and then maybe we can, get going on this. But I also think addressing our moral and financial debt is going to be part of the picture. So there you go. That's my, those are my thoughts. Have I kept everybody, or has everybody left me? Let me see if there's some questions. What do you think about the discussions about reparations? This is going to be rubber meet the road time, I think, for a lot of people. As I mentioned, I tossed off the idea about, losing our mortgage deduction. That bites. That's a big one. And that has been proposed in the Oregon legislature. I'm not saying that's what's the answer, but I think looking, we can't just sit and, okay, we're stuck, we're here, okay, everybody change. It's going to involve some pain, some process. We need to even the score. How it's done, I would say through social programs and so on. At least that's what's, being discussed. At one point, this was another one of my ouch racism things. I would say to myself, reparations, how are we going to do reparations? Slaves, are we going to have to, see what families were slaves? How are we going to, what money are we going to be able to give them? I think that kind of shows my racism, because I had such a limited view. Oh, that was back then, that racism, that was back then. So I think people are thinking more of social interventions in the context of reparations. Knowing the history gives one pause to think, how would me and my family, how would African-American figure in your genealogy? Well, genealogy is a little bit different than genetics. I would imagine most all of us have some African-American, it depends on how far you want to go and so on. And there are some geographic similarities, but they have, if you take a look, and I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but scientists have talked about populations and ancestors. And so they go to a population and they look at the chromosomal alleles, A-L-L-E, I think, alleles. That's the basic, little things on the chromosome. And, that didn't work either. What they would do is they'd go into one population and they'd kind of seem to identify something. But then, someone in Europe and someone in Asia would have the same thing. And even in that same population, there'd be incredible diversity. Hopefully that answers. And we try to make American Indians assimilate. Yeah. I think many of us are aware of the horrors of that, what we did there. And, I think, for example, it's Warm Springs, the reservation, they don't even have water, sanitary. I mean, this has been going on for decades, years beyond that. Think of all the treaties that we have just, we need to earn money. We need to put that land out there. We're white folk. Anyway, Mary Pat. See, another George. Free tuition to descendants. That sounds like a good idea. There are policy options. I totally agree with you, Mary Pat. We need to be able to have the discussion without rancor and open minds. Amen to that. Very profound. Very profound.
Trish,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about the organization that you are working with? I can't remember the acronym right now, but it's the Black People of Color and so forth group that you have been in conversation with and working with.
Yeah. This one's a toughie. I'm a member, if this is what you're referring to, I'm a member of the TANF, that's Temporary Assistance for Needy Family Alliance. And it's kind of had a choppy history and so on. But they're thinking of changing the name, and they're mostly Hispanics and whites in this particular group. And so we're talking about, how to rename the TANF Alliance. So one woman, and I frankly wasn't familiar with the fact that she was Hispanic. Her name is Venus. And she said, well, how about abolish poverty? And I said, well, I don't know about that, because, abolish, I kind of associate with abolition, and I, would think we might need to speak to some Black folks, some African Americans. I wouldn't want to appropriate that. Sounded pretty reasonable, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, one thing, unbeknownst to me, there had been a list sent out of proposed names for the TANF Alliance, and she'd made several suggestions. I didn't know that. But aside from that, what I was doing is I was like, just by saying that, I was invalidating what she was saying. It's like, okay, I'm the big guy around here. I'm the white person. I get to decide. At least that's how it was perceived. Now we're working that out, and it's an interesting process. We've divided, at least for certain time frames, into affinity groups. There's a white affinity group and a people of color affinity group. And within that affinity group, it's kind of like a consciousness raising group. I think we did that a long time ago, but, talk about being white. And and again, we're excluded from some of the meetings. It's, here I am trying to help, right? But I need to think about that. So I don't know if that makes any sense. That was probably more out there than you can appreciate. But it was like I was taking my white privilege saying, this is the way it is, even though I sounded really nice. I'm being, considerate of Black folk. Property tax is the basis for funding. Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, property tax is the basis for funding education. It's also interesting that there is, schools get paid by the number of students that they have. So one of the issues is, how do you draw students to, shall we say, an underserved school, i.e., Black school. There's something called the bliss point. Weird, I know. But that means the percentage of white folk or white students in a class that will then bring other white students into the class. Go figure. But needless to say, I think we need to examine busing, which was, supposedly going to be helpful. Which way do you think the buses ran? I'll just let that one hang out there. Yes, Joyce, there's a conversation with a Black man on YouTube. Joyce, it is mentioned in my bibliography. I still think, and it's excellent, I totally recommend it. I still think the thing that I recommend the most, and it's a little bit hard to access. If you have problems, let me know. It's a podcast on Scene, that's SCENE, like, a play, Scene on Radio. Although it's not radio, it's podcast. But it's called Seeing White. It's the second episode. And I've got to reference John Biewen and another individual, Chenderai. And you will recognize some of the things that I just said. It's just really eye-opening. It's just eye-opening. So, but yes.
The reference list is now in the chat. People can click on that and download it. It's a PDF.
The Oregon Conversation Project has a number of guided workshops. Yep. And using the word folk can denote a derogatory word about Blacks. It can. It can. I don't think so. I find, we get into these, is it a capital B Black, capital W white? I try to call, and I'm going to say Black folk, the name that I have perceived they like to be called. And I have heard Black folk. So that's why then I use white folk. But, that's what this is all about. Sticking your foot in it and going, being willing to be called on it, and ouch, and I gotta think about this, 10 steps back. Okay. Kamala Harris was bust and is in favor. Well, oh yes, so you want to talk about race, and that is also referred to on the Biblio. I recommend it. There's so much out there. There's so much out there to learn. And, sometimes I feel, here I am, a white person, with these racist limitations, but I'm being given an opportunity to expand my worldview, get to know myself better, get to know other people better, become involved at whatever level I might want to be involved. I'm really doubly lucky or triply lucky. Okay. Have I chased you all away yet?
No.
Good. What do you think, guys? Food for thought?
Very much food for thought, Trish. I just finished reading a fiction book by Louise Erdrich called The Night Watchman.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, amazing. Subtle, very subtle, but so amazing about American Indians. It just chills me every time I think about it.
Yep.
And I read a lot about it, and to me, it's one of the tragedies of our country, along with slavery.
Well, like what we did to the Cherokee. I mean, what happened with the Cherokee in, I forget exactly when it was, I'm going to say the 20s maybe. They discovered oil on their land. Uh-oh.
The Osage.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
Right.
So what happened?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You kind of similar to the redlining process that happens here, maybe that's happened, I don't know, decades, which says that, tries to put Black folk in one area, labeling, undesirable areas, churning areas so that, white folk can, well, actually, so real estate agents can earn money, bankers can earn money, appraisers can earn money, keep things going, keep the money chain going. But in the situation of the Osage, it was to the point, the sheriff was involved.
They were murdered.
They
Their
were
husbands.
and they would marry. They would marry an Osage woman and kill her.
Yeah. Take her land and get the oil. Yeah.
Right.
The Cherokee were driven out of Tennessee by President Andrew Jackson.
Well, I guess
And they went on the Trail of Tears, and they were,
I'm thinking of the book Osage County, the Osage County book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read those, yeah.
Yeah.
Age mergers.
Trish,
Yeah.
I read about half of How to Be an Anti-Racist, but I also read White Fragility. Did you read that?
Yep.
What did you think of White Fragility?
Well, I know that there have been some critiques about it. I think it's good. I mean, for such a long time, to say you're a racist or I'm a racist, oh my God. Or to really think about our history of racism and how we, on some level, have perpetuated it and continue to. Racism was like taboo. Did we talk about it? I mean, it's a huge subject. Did it come up in our coffee conversations and, I mean, maybe our social action meetings, but
I thought what she did well, because she's a sociologist,
yes.
was go at it very much on a group culture basis. I felt like anti-racist, his position was that you were supposed to ignore the culture and take people one by one. No human group ever in history has done that. It's very difficult to do, but at least what she did was show us how and why.
Yeah.
And she came well prepared with her history. She knew her stuff.
Well, I suggest you read Stamped in America by Ibram Kendi. That he wrote the anti-racist
Right.
book.
That's the one I read part of.
But also, oh gosh, I'm not going to mention books. There's one I'm reading now that basically makes the story. We talked about de facto segregation or whatever. This guy is talking about, the Supreme Court's gone along with it, segregation for quite a while.
Of course.
Yeah. Read White Fragility. Yeah. Yes, I see. Sarah?
Trish?
Yeah.
Yes. One thing that we haven't brought up, but has really come to the fore during the virus, is anti-Chinese or anti-Asian sentiments. And I have a good friend who's Chinese American, and somebody said right in front of her, so that she could hear, obviously she could hear, well, we hope those chinks go back. And what woman says chinks in this day and age? I mean, it was just horrific to even think anybody would say something like that. But they are very uneasy and very nervous and worried in this climate.
Yes.
Blaming, especially with Trump blaming the virus on them.
Yes, absolutely. From China. Yes, I'm well aware. But the issue with that one too is, being placed in that situation, I talked about the oops or the ouch. It's kind of like, what do I do? How do I deal with that? My friend has just been called a chink. Now, there are situations where violence may ensue. Obviously there are different situations, but how do we call that out? How do we, is it, what would occur to me is, saying something maybe within the earshot of the other person, although I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm kind of a forward person. I say things that I probably shouldn't say, but wow, I haven't heard that term in a long time,
Since the railroads came in.
But the Chinese have such a beautiful history, and I just so much admire being a friend of yours, whatever,
That's nice.
They're hard to think of on the spot, but we're not used to really calling things out. It's kind of, I think that's we just don't see it. We're colorblind. So good.
Well, or you think you might embarrass the person more that was being referred to.
Right.
Well, I think evaluating
of it. Yeah.
I think evaluating, Marlene, I think that was Marlene.
Yes.
Evaluating who you're talking to and what the circumstances are, I totally agree. But I also think that we usually just revert to the, don't say anything.
Right.
Again,
Unfortunately.
that doesn't mean we always have to say something, but I think it's a matter of being aware of it, listening to it as best one can, respond to it. Not easy, not easy, not easy. So I was looking, Ta-Nehisi Coates, yes, he's referred to, great author, although I love the fact that he does comics. I don't know, he's got it. He not only writes some great books, but he's, Black Panther and so on. Wilkerson, yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It does not help to have a president. I wish we had one.
Don't we all?
Yes. Okay, I'm not going to comment on the racist walls.
I didn't finish my chat there. It skipped over.
Okay.
I was saying it doesn't help to have a president say from China. It ridicules for the whole country. That's what I was saying.
Absolutely. Spot on. Spot on. Well, guys, I've kept you here an hour and 15 minutes. Hopefully this has been food for thought. Better. I mean, I don't know about you, but those s'mores. I thought of like one bite and I'm going to have to go, oh.
Thank you, Trish.
Whatever.
This is when we wish we could all share those s'mores so that we wouldn't have a whole pan just to ourselves.
Oh my God.
Any more questions for Trish? Trish, this was awesome. Just so wonderful to have this really discussion. I mean, you told us about things, but we all had a good discussion about it. So,
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
I just heard from someone that next time I need to wear a lanyard and a whistle. I'll work on it. A few days to get a whistle.
We'll have to do the braiding of the plastic.
Yes, right, yeah.
Oh, praise
Yeah.
So Nancy, is the next program going to be basket weaving?
The next activity, you mean? I was going to actually poll the group as to their favorite activities at camp. I won the barrel races at my camp, but I couldn't find a good picture of barrel races online. So
we didn't have those.
What's your favorite activity at camp?
Mine was always swimming.
Archery and swimming.
Yeah, but
trail marking, absolutely trail marking.
Hey, Nancy, Southern girls didn't do barrel racing.
Southern girls did. Too bad.
Sitting around the campfire singing.
Yeah.
Love to sing.
Toasting s'mores.
Pat Squire, you haven't sang any camp songs tonight.
I can't sing. That's the problem.
Somebody sing a camp song for us.
I can tell stories, but I can't sing.
She's got a lot of hats, though.
Yeah, I do. I have lots of hats.
See, I did bring my hat, though. I brought my hat.
Oh, good. You got that canoe hat. All right.
My listening hat.
I'm a privileged child. I never went to camp.
So anybody have anything else to share?
I do. Some people have asked me what that photo is that they see on my closet door hanging behind me.
Beautiful.
Patience.
Beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
And
Nice.
Oh,
one of my favorite photos ever. I'm going to try and track that young woman down and see where she is and what she's doing.
nice.
great. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign on out.
All right, Trish.
Thank you so much.
Let's give a big hand.
Yeah.
Big hands.
Everybody, thank you again.